Don't you know?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, first I want to thank you for being here today. I know it's Sunday. I know many of you have been in church for hours, and then you came here to see me, so I appreciate it. I'll try not to be too preachy, and I'll try to conserve my voice. I've been struggling with my voice the last few days, but it feels strong today, and I'm grateful to that, and I thank our Heavenly Father for that. So this morning, we got the news that Nancy Reagan has passed. And Jeanette and I, in 2011, had the unique opportunity to meet with Nancy Reagan. I had been invited to speak at the Reagan Library, which was an incredible honor for me, because I grew up and I am a child of the Reagan Revolution. My grandfather used to sit on the porch of our home in Las Vegas, Nevada. During the early 80s, he lived with us, and he would sit there for hours, and I would sit there and I would listen to him tell me stories about him growing up. But what instilled in his stories was his is a man who understood how unique and special America was, because he knew what life was like outside of America. My grandfather was one of 19 kids born in rural Cuba. I know, 19. They had their own labor program in that farm. And he had polio when he was 6 years old. And so he had lost the use of one of his legs. So he was the only child that couldn't work on the farm. And so he had to go to school. He was the only one of his siblings that knew how to read and write, because they knew he wouldn't be able to use his body to earn a living. And as a result, he learned and he read a lot. In fact, one of his first jobs was he would sit in the front of a cigar factory while the cigar rollers were rolling the cigars. He would sit in the front, and this is a common job called a lector. He would read to them. First, he would read the newspapers, then he would read novels. And as a result, two things happened. Number one, he became very learned, very well read. And number two, he became a great storyteller. And he would tell me all kinds of stories about the history of mankind and obviously the movement of democracy, what communism did to Cuba. But my grandfather loved Ronald Reagan. Never met him, obviously, but he loved him. And the reason why he loved Reagan so much is because Reagan believed that America was a special country. And my grandfather understood that America was a special country, because he knew America was the only thing standing in the way of other countries becoming like his former homeland of Cuba. So Nancy Reagan's passing today reminds me of the end of that era. 36 years ago, when Ronald Reagan became president of the United States. The younger people here obviously don't remember that presidency, but it's amazing even now that I go to rallies all around the country and people at Reagan are wearing, young Americans are wearing Reagan Bush hats. And this is not just about nostalgia. Ronald Reagan was the conservative movement at its best. At its best, conservatism is not about anger. At its best, conservatism is not about fear. At its best, the conservative movement is not about division. At its best, the conservative movement is about the belief in fundamental principles of limited government and free enterprise and a strong national defense and traditional values. And it's about those values being transmitted in the most optimistic way possible. My friends, as Americans, we always have reason to be optimistic. Our Heavenly Father has blessed us with the most fertile land on earth, protected on both sides by vast oceans, blessed with the most innovative people in the history of mankind, and blessed with a republic that has protected our liberties for over 2 centuries. We are truly blessed to be Americans. I am blessed to be an American because my parents weren't born here. They came here through the grace of God in 1956. Had they gone to any other nation on earth, I'm not sure where I would be this evening, but I would not be standing on a podium in a hangar running for the highest office in the land. I would have probably been living in a society like most of those that have ever existed, where your future is largely determined by who your parents are, where you are basically limited by the circumstances of your birth. This country's in need of a conservative revival again. But a conservative revival that is not built on anger or frustration. We have a reason to be frustrated. Our nation is not headed in the right direction. You have a reason to be angry at your political leaders. They unfortunately have not served us well for the better part of 2 decades. But I want you to know we also have reason to be optimistic. For I believe if we do what needs to be done, the greatest era in American history is truly within our reach. But we have to do it now. We have to do it now. We have to do it now. 2016 is not just a choice between political parties. It is a referendum on our identity as a nation, as a people. The fundamental question before us is, what kind of country do we want America to be in this new century? If we stay on the road we are on right now, America will still be an important country, but I believe it will stop being a special one. For the road that we are on right now is one that is robbing us of many of the things that make us special. It is why I chose not to run for re-election to the Senate and to take a year of my life, many days away from my family, and run for the presidency. Because I believe that if we do not elect a new president who will help re-embrace the principles that made us special, we will lose the American dream and the things that made this the most exceptional nation in the history of mankind. I'm here today to ask you for your vote on Tuesday, and I want you to know what you will get when I'm President of the United States. For the first time in 8 years, you will have a president that actually follows and adheres to the Constitution of the United States of America. You will have a president that defends the First Amendment. For it is in the First Amendment that has protected our rights to live out the teachings of our faith in every single aspect of our lives. If you elect me president, for the first time in 8 years, you will have a president that defends the Second Amendment, because you have a right to protect your family. When you elect me president for the first time in 8 years, you will have a president that understands that most of the problems in America are not going to be solved in Washington, D.C. They're solved in our homes, in our churches, in our community. And if it has a government solution, it is likelier to be in the state government than it is in the federal government. When I take the oath of office, unlike the current occupant of the White House, I will actually mean it. And I will prove it as soon as I walk into the Oval Office. Because on my first day in office, I am going to repeal every single one of Barack Obama's unconstitutional executive orders. When I'm President of the United States for the first time in 8 years, you're going to have someone that believes in the free enterprise system. And I believe in free enterprise not because my parents were wealthy. They were not. My parents were not. They were hotel employees. My father was a bartender at hotels, and my mother was a maid. And they never made millions of dollars, but they were successful people because they owned a home, and they raised their family, and they left us with a better life, and they retired with dignity. And these things were possible because free enterprise works. Because free enterprise allowed someone to open up a hotel, and that hotel hired them on Miami Beach and in Las Vegas. And with the money they earned at this hotel, they raised their families and provided for them a better future. I love free enterprise because it is the only economic model in the history of the world where you can make poor people richer, and you don't have to make rich people poorer, where you can lift everyone up. And that's why in this campaign, I've treated this as a serious campaign. I ask you to go on my website, marcorubio.com. And in that website, you are going to see I have real ideas about fixing our tax code, about rolling back federal regulations, about saving Social Security and Medicare, about balancing our budget, about fully utilizing the energy resources God has blessed us with, and about repealing and replacing Obamacare once and for all. When you elect me President of the United States, you're going to have a real commander-in-chief. The world has grown incredibly dangerous. There is a lunatic and a sociopath in North Korea who also happens to possess nuclear weapons. The Chinese government is sowing all sorts of instability. They're trying to take over the South China Sea. They hack into our computers. They steal our inventions. Vladimir Putin is sowing instability in Europe and in the Middle East. Iran is about to get $100 billion of sanctions relief, which they're going to use to buy or build a nuclear weapon. And radical Islamic jihadists are spreading throughout the world. ISIS has affiliates in over a dozen countries. In the face of all of these threats, we're gutting our military. We will soon have, because of Barack Obama's budget cuts, we will soon have the smallest army since the end of World War II. We will soon have the smallest Navy in 100 years, and we will soon have the smallest Air Force in our history. We are gutting our military. You know that here as well. The national labs located nearby, a place that is critical to our future, to our, not just our nuclear deterrent, but to the ability to power our nuclear submarines and ships. All of that is being threatened by this ridiculous sequester. Before we spend money on anything, we should be fully funding our national security. When I'm president, we will. When I'm president, we are going to undertake a Reagan-style rebuilding of the United States military. I do not like war. I, as you are, am a lover of peace. I want to live in a world where there is no war. Unfortunately, sometimes in order to achieve peace, you must defeat the enemies of peace. ISIS and radical Islamic jihadists are enemies of peace. And you can't negotiate with them. They don't have ambassadors. They don't have a diplomatic corps. The only way to defeat radical jihadists is to defeat them militarily. And that's why when I'm president of the United States, our intelligence agencies, which by the way, Senator Risch and I work with very closely because of our role in the Select Intelligence Committee, our intelligence agencies are going to find these jihadists. Our military is going to destroy them. And if we capture any of these terrorists alive, they're not going to have the right to remain silent, and they're not coming to a prison in the United States. We are going to send them to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. When I'm president of the United States, we are going to stand with our allies, particularly Israel. I want you to know that Israel is not just another country. Israel is not just another country. Israel is a nation created for a special purpose. Israel was created as a homeland for the Jewish people in the aftermath of the Holocaust. Israel is the only pro-American free enterprise democracy in the entire Middle East. And our current president treats the Prime Minister of Israel with less respect than what he now gives the Ayatollah of Iran. That will change when I'm president, because on my first day in office, I am going to cancel Barack Obama's deal with Iran. When I'm president, we're going to take care of our veterans again. We are not taking care of our veterans now in this country. If you're a veteran, will you raise your hand so we can thank you for your service? God bless you so much. Thank you. We owe you an extraordinary debt of gratitude. Our veterans took care of us. Now we have to take care of them, and we are not. My brother's a veteran. He's a 7th Special Forces Green Beret from 1968 to 1971. And one day, on a training mission, jumped out of an airplane with a parachute, obviously. But he landed badly, and he knocked out his front teeth. And so every few years, he has to go to the VA to get a dental claim. And it is always a hassle. I think Senator Risch would tell you this as well, but at least in my office, 1 out of 4 calls is a veteran having a hard time with the VA. My brother's one of them. They treat him as if they're doing him a favor, as opposed to the other way around. They did us the favor. And there's no accountability at the VA right now. There are good people working at the VA. There are really good people that work there. I'm not talking about them. I thank them for what they do. But there are people that are not doing a good job. The other day, the headline in USA Today said that calls to the VA suicide hotline were going to voicemail. And sadly, about 48 hours ago, we read that one of the calls that went to voicemail was a young veteran who laid down in front of a railroad track and was killed. He committed suicide. They called him the day after he committed suicide and left a voicemail on his cell phone, which obviously he didn't answer. This is a terrible thing, and no one's being held accountable for it. Now, 2 years ago, believe it or not, this is going to sound strange, but I worked with Bernie Sanders, and we passed a bill called the VA Accountability Act, which gives us the power to fire senior executives at the VA who are not doing a good job. Barack Obama's not firing anybody. When I'm president, if you're not doing a good job, you'll be fired from your job. But don't worry, Bernie and I don't agree on virtually anything else. And by the way, when I'm president, our veterans will be able to take their VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor that they want to go to. We're also constantly reminded that many of our veterans don't stop serving us when they come home. Many of our veterans, you'll find them in a police department now. You'll find them in a fire station or as an EMT. A week ago, I was in Virginia, a week ago today, and the news was about 3 police officers that had just been shot. One of them was killed. She was a Marine reservist. She was on her first day on the job. And so I think it's always appropriate to stop and thank our firefighters, our EMTs, and our police officers for what they do for us and for our country. This is what we need to do. If we do these things, I believe the greatest era in our history is within our reach. If we stay on the road we are on right now, we are going to have to explain to our children why they are the first generation in American history who inherited a diminished country from their parents. That's never happened in over 2 centuries of American history. We're on the verge of seeing that happen in our time. If we stay on this road, that's what's going to happen. If Hillary Clinton is elected, that's what's going to happen. And that's the other reason I'm asking you to vote for me. This is a very unique election, for lack of a better term. And I know you've got some choices to make. And usually when people come to you and say, vote for me because I can win, that usually means vote for me, I can win, but you're going to have to compromise on your principles to vote for me. You don't. I'm as conservative as anyone running for president of the United States. According to the National Journal, the most conservative senator in Washington, D.C. is named Jim Risch, and he's endorsing me. He would not endorse me if I was not a conservative. But my conservatism didn't start 2 years ago when I started thinking about running for president. My conservatism is a 15-year record of public service. I was a state legislator in Florida, which is a part-time job. I was the Speaker of the Florida House. And as Speaker of the Florida House, for example, even before I became Speaker, I passed the best eminent domain laws in the country. Today, a private developer cannot take away private property to build a hotel or anything else in Florida because of a law that I passed. When I was Speaker in Florida, we balanced our budget every year and we didn't raise a penny in taxes. In fact, we cut taxes even in the middle of an economic downturn. When I was Speaker, we reformed our public school curriculum and protected homeschoolers, and we didn't need Common Core. We didn't need the federal government. We did it where it belongs, at the local and state level. When I was Speaker, we brought vocational training back to our schools because we need to train more of our young people to be welders and pipe fitters and mechanics and car technicians. And then I became a private citizen because we have term limits, and I support term limits. And then I ran for the Senate in a huge underdog race against the sitting governor of Florida, who claimed to be a conservative and a Republican, and I knew he wasn't. And I took on the Republican establishment, and we won. And in Washington, I'm proud of the work I've done there. I led the effort, and we got rid of the Obamacare bailout fund. They were going to use your taxpayer money to bail out private insurance companies. That no longer exists because I led the effort and we wiped it out. Today, U.S. foreign aid is leveraged in a way to deal with human trafficking around the world because I passed the Girls Count Act. Today, there are additional sanctions on Hezbollah, an anti-Israeli terrorist group, because of the bill I passed. But it's still not enough. It's still not enough. For there is nothing like the presidency. Congress can help shape the agenda, but only a president can set it. And we need a president that will set this agenda in a way that takes us back to the principles that made us great to begin with. I'm asking you for your vote because I'm as conservative as anyone running, but I'm the conservative that can win. I'm a conservative that can win because I can unite this party. With all due respect to everyone else still in the race, they cannot unite this party. And if we are divided against each other going into September, October, November, if we're still trying to convince other Republicans to come on board, we're going to lose. A house divided cannot stand. We must be united, and I'm the only one left that can unite us, but I'm also the only one left running that can grow it. You see, if all we have is the same people vote for us again, we're going to lose again. We have to grow this party, not by changing our principles, but by taking our principles to people that don't normally vote for us. That's why I'm so proud that this evening, in the island of Puerto Rico, I won 70% of the vote. I won that primary in the 23 delegates. In an open primary where anyone can vote, not just Republicans, Democrats and independents, I got over 70% of the vote. Not because I became less conservative, but because I took our conservative principles to people who are living the way I grew up. I will take our conservative principles to people living paycheck to paycheck, because I've lived paycheck to paycheck, because I grew up paycheck to paycheck. We'll take our conservative principles to young Americans, many of whom are facing thousands of dollars in student loan debt, because up until 3 years ago, I still had student loan debt. I've never met her, but I paid Sally Mae a lot of money. I'll take our conservative principles to young families raising their children in the 21st century, because Jeanette and I are raising our first 4 children in the 21st century. And my friends, it is harder than ever to instill in your children the values they teach in our church, instead of the values they constantly try to ram down our throat in popular culture. I will unite this party, and I will grow it, and we will win, and the Democrats know that. That's why the Democrats have spent more time and more money and more resources attacking me than any other candidate in this race. They have attacked me more than all the other candidates combined, because they know that if I'm our nominee, we win. Hillary Clinton does not want to run against me, but I can't wait to run against her. But I need your help. I need your help. It's crunch time now. I need your help. I need to win here. And I need your votes to do that. I don't just need your vote. I need you to go out and find other people to vote for me. Because I'm telling you, if we nominate the wrong person, God bless them. I like everybody who's running. I like everybody who's running. But some more than others. Right. This is not about that anymore. Put all that aside. I'm done with all that. I want to win. I want to win. Because I don't want to wake up on the second Wednesday of November and have to read that Hillary Clinton is now the president, and all the stuff Barack Obama has been doing is staying in place for another 4 years. We can't afford it. We can't afford it as a nation. We can't afford it as a people. We have to win. And again, usually when somebody comes to you and says, vote for him or her because they're electable, that means vote for him or her because they're not as conservative. I think the opposite is true now. I think we need a conservatism, but a conservatism that's optimistic, a conservatism that's forward-leaning. And that's the other thing I'll do as president. I will never divide our people against each other on purpose. I will never ask you to hate another group of Americans so that I win your vote. I will never deliberately pit us against each other. On the contrary, I will always seek to bring us together. I will seek to be the president of all the American people, even the ones that don't vote for me. Because I believe that a president has to love all of the American people. You have to love all the American people, even the ones that don't love you back. For me, this is deeply personal, this whole election. People ask me, what is it that keeps you going? And there's a lot of things. My love for this country, the opportunity to serve, the fact that we are now engaged in a debate over what kind of country my children will live in. But there's one more thing that really has kept me going even throughout public service. It's what allowed me to run and win as an underdog for the state legislature. It's what allowed me to run and win as an underdog for the U.S. Senate. And it's what I believe will lead me to run and win as an underdog now for the presidency. And that is that America's not just the country I was born in. This is the country that literally changed the history of my family. I told you a little bit about my parents. My mother was one of 7 girls. My grandfather that I talked about was her dad. My mother says that growing up, she never went to bed hungry, but she knows her parents did. They gave up eating on some nights so their kids could eat. My father went to bed hungry. 4 days shy of his 9th birthday, my father's mother died. And so my dad had to stop going to school and he had to start working as a 9-year-old boy in the streets of Havana. He never went back to school, and he would have worked for the next 70 years of his life. My parents came here in 1956 because they wanted a better life, and they just couldn't get ahead in Cuba. So they came here, and they had nothing. The first words my father learned in English were, "I'm looking for a job." They didn't know anyone, they had no money, no connections, no education, and they struggled. A few years ago, when I was writing my first book about my family's history, my mother admitted to me that they were very discouraged when they first got here. Life was very hard for them. My father in particular struggled to find work. And they were so discouraged, they wondered, did we make a mistake? Maybe we should go back to Cuba. You can't imagine how happy I am they did not. I may never have been born. But they stuck it out. They stuck it out. And less than 10 years after my parents arrived here with nothing, my father was just a bartender at a hotel in Miami Beach, my parents were able to buy their first home. Over the next few decades, doing those same kinds of jobs, my mom was a maid, a stock clerk at Kmart, a cashier at a coffee shop. My parents were able to retire with dignity. But you know the most important thing of all? My parents were able to leave all 4 of their children better off than themselves. When people say to me, "You don't come from privilege," I say, "You're wrong. I may not come from economic privilege, but I come from an extraordinary privilege. I was raised by 2 parents who were married to each other, were in love with one another, and raised their children to believe that it didn't matter that my dad was a bartender and my mom was a maid. We could be anything we wanted to be." I share that story with you because I want you to know a little bit about what drives me. But that's not just my story. As Americans, that's our story. For who among us is not but a generation or 2 removed from a similar story? Maybe it was the sacrifices that your grandparents made for your parents. Maybe it was your father who you remember worked 2 jobs so you could get ahead. Maybe it was your mother who gave up her own dreams so you could achieve yours. Or maybe that's you now. One of the things that happens to me, as you can imagine, I stay in a lot of hotels, in fact, almost exclusively these days. And every now and then, when I'm getting up in the morning to leave, I'll run into the maids, some of whom know that my mother was a maid. And I talk to them. Most, as you can imagine, were born somewhere else. And time and again, the same thing comes out. They are cleaning rooms and making sheets and picking them after my mess so that their kids can one day be anything they want. This is called the American dream. It's a dream people have all over the world, but it's only been possible for millions of people in one place. And it wasn't by accident. The American dream was not by chance. It is the result of the fact that each generation throughout our history has done its part. We are a nation founded on the powerful spiritual principle that our rights do not come from government, and our rights do not come from the law, and our rights do not come from our leaders. Our rights come from our Heavenly Father, and our rights come from God, and that every human being not just has a right to live, but a right to life and liberty and to pursue happiness. That's why I believe all human life is sacred. That's why I believe that all human life is worthy of the protection of our laws, and that's why I believe so passionately in the American dream. The American dream is not dead, but it is in trouble. And if we lose it, we will lose what makes us special. But I think we have a chance to do something special in this generation. But we have to do it now in this election. And so I know that times are tough. I know the news is often bad. I know we live in a time of great doubt. But I ask you, don't give in to the fear. Don't give in to the frustration. Allow it to motivate you, but do not allow it to define us. Do not allow the conservative movement to be defined as anger. Instead, allow that anger to motivate us to do something that causes us to be optimistic. Because I am here to tell you what history will say of us if we do what needs to be done. If in this election we elect the right person, if in this election you elect me, I want you to know that this generation will do its part, and I want you to know what history will say of us. After our work is done, history will say of this generation that we lived in the early years of this new century in a difficult time. And we weren't sure which direction it was going to go. The world was changing fast, and after 8 years of Barack Obama and one crazy election, we almost got it wrong. We came this close to getting it wrong. But then in 2016, we remembered who we were. In 2016, we remembered what America was. And like the generations that came before us, we confronted our challenges, we solved our problems, and we embraced our opportunities. And when our work was done in this generation, our children became the freest and the most prosperous Americans that ever lived. And the American dream didn't just survive, it reached more people and changed more lives than ever before. And the 21st century was not just as good as the 20th century, it was better. It became a new American century. This is what we have the chance to do together, but first I need your vote this Tuesday. You elect me, and I promise you we will do what needs to be done, and we will leave for our children what our parents left for us, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.